So, just in case you haven't checked into WhatCulture Wrestling for the last 24 hours, Jay Briscoe did very sadly pass away yesterday, and we did some videos, and I would implore you to check those out. But I can't just start AEW Dynamite ups and downs by going and pretending it didn't happen. So I just want to say once again, thoughts with his friends and family. I genuinely hope all of them are okay. And fair play to AEW, because the first thing we did see on this evening was a graphic for Jay Briscoe. And I would suggest we keep all of them in our hearts. And of course, now I think the best thing to do is remember that wrestling here is entertain us and is here to put smiles on our faces. So we're just gonna sit down or stand up and try and have a good time with the Dynamite show that we did just see. But as a quick aside, I do want to say, if we can all try and be a little bit nicer to each other over the next few weeks and months and years, I don't think that would be a bad thing at all. Otherwise though, hello, my name is Simon from WhatCulture. I appreciate every single one of you that do tune in and allow me to do this. Let's take the finger of power, get the good bits up, bad bits are down. So we will start this week's episode by being very self-indulgent, because as Dynamite started, I stared out into the crowd and what did I see? A sign that said, Simon, give me an up. As I always say, but I will continue to say, this absolutely makes me feel all warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum, and I super duper appreciate it as I continue to speak like a child. Your wish is also my command, because I'm a genie, you do get an up. Look at this. We bring down the signboard. It is up to 12 across AEW and WWE, and quite frankly, that is redonkulous. Jay Lethal versus Orange Cassidy was also our first matchup, and given the last 24 hours, this was really good, it was really silly, it was really goofy, it was really ridiculous, and I thought it was exactly what we all needed. The All-Atlantic title was also on the line, and we were told that Sonjay Dutt, Jeff Jarrett, and Satnam Singh have been told, if any of you do get involved, given what you have been doing the recent few weeks, we are gonna fire Sonjay Dutt. Now, it took about 8 seconds before these three goobers did come to ringside. They were just gonna sit there, I suppose, try and cast distraction from afar. But Jeff Jarrett almost instantly was like, I'm gonna go interfere. Sonjay was like, what are you doing? Are you nuts? Danhausen was also here pretending to be a ticket inspector, and I suppose if they didn't have their stubs, he was gonna kick them out of there. And then the best friends turned up, and they too were sitting in the front row and eating popcorn. And I said to myself, this is pretty damn wonderful. Jay Lethal and Orange Cassidy also ran at each other at 100 miles per hour, and Orange Cassidy was doing a big dive before Jay Lethal caught him and gave him the hot shot. This is when Danhausen decided, well, I'm just gonna hop over Barry Barricade and I'm just gonna be Orange's manager. And I was like, damn, he wears many hats. It didn't help at all, because the first thing that happened to Cassidy is he got launched into Rita the ring post. I was just there chuckling away like a seal. And I was all, man, whoever booked this, thank you very much. I should also mention that throughout the evening, a lot of wrestlers were wearing black armbands that had Jay Briscoe's name on it, and I thought that was very nice. And when Jay Lethal went to do the big elbow, Orange Cassidy was like, well, I'm just gonna roll around a bit, and then you're not gonna be able to hit it. And he was 100% correct. It really worked too, because he was able to hit the Stun Dog Millionaire for a near fall. But when he went for a DDT, and Jay was able to turn that into the lethal injection, once again, the piece of fruit was like, well, look, it worked before, so I'm just gonna roll to the floor. He's the smartest wrestler ever. It got even more crazy because Chuck Taylor just decided he was going to pour his popcorn over everybody, and that distracted the referee, because I can only presume the referee is well into snacks. And this is when Jeff Jarrett got the guitar. He was going to pass it to Lethal when Danhausen grabbed it and he started to play a tune. Somebody give this the Back to the Year award already. Of course, that opened the door for Cassidy to fly in with the orange punch, and he got the 1, 2, 3. And I would give this a 10 out of 10. Honestly, within 12 minutes, I just felt the glee going through my body, and it reminded me, yes, this is what I want from my wrestling. A wonderful distraction and just having a good time. Let's get it up. Sonjay Dutt was also freaking out afterwards, because Satnam and Jarrett were now like, well, we're gonna throw those bones. He's like, I really like my job, would you stop? And when they realized this, Orange Cassidy was like, all right, I'm just gonna wind you up. And he did his weak strikes before all the best friends walked away. Also, I do believe that was the 10th defense of the All-Atlantic title by Orange Cassidy, and that's a record. I'm pretty sure before this, anybody from all the belts was only 9. So bravo to him. But then I had this video for Kushida versus Darby Allin, which was going to be our main event later. I was like, this is crazy. How is Kushida at AEW when, yes, if you were watching on Fight TV like I was, all of a sudden the sound went really weird, and it was like a robot was speaking to you. I love wrestling. And look, is it annoying? Yes. But does it really matter? No. Mistakes happen. This goodness then kept on coming too, because it was the Young Bucks versus Top Flight, My word. Now beforehand, I was all like, well, Darius and Dante Martin should win this, because not only did they win that Trios Battle Royal alongside AR Fox recently, but if they are victorious here, we can then do a Trios title match, and you don't have to have the Elite lose. They can ping AR Fox, and the Martins can be like, well, look, we're on a bit of a tear right now, and although it wasn't successful when it came to the Trios, why don't we get a tag team title shot? And why I don't want the Acclaim to lose anytime soon, do I think the Top Flight should be the champions in 2023? The finger says yes. It's just madness to begin with, because everyone was leaping around like gravity wasn't a problem when Matt and Nick Jackson used their experience and basically tied Top Flight up in the corner. It also became a massive problem for Dante, because every time he tried to make the hot tag, the Young Bucks would cut him off, and for a good while they were just kicking his ass. And I was like, well, it's done. They're never gonna survive. Obviously they were. Because eventually Dante was able to roll through an arm drag, he got the head scissors onto Matt Jackson, and he made the hot tag to Darius. And this guy, his temperature must have been 140 degrees, because he went crazy. Because he hit a Spanish fly, took out Nick Jackson with a dive, then he was taking out Matt Jackson with a crossbody. And even when the Young Bucks were like, damn it, we can't handle this anymore, we better hit the Meltzer driver, Top Flight just stopped them. And instead, Darius and Dante went into that powerbomb flatliner nosedive thingamajig, and honestly, the near fall on that. Nick Jackson broke it up at the last second, but I totally bit. I think he must have been annoyed about this as well, because all of a sudden Nick went flatliner, moonsault to the outside, and hit a destroyer back on the inside when the Young Bucks hit this Doomsday Device-esque move, and that must have been a wink and a nod to the Briscoes. And I felt it. Darius then broke up that cover and he went for another dive, but he got super kicked in midair, so I was like, well, he was gone. And things looked very bad for Darius, because he was about to be BTE triggered when he ducked and dodged out of the way, meaning Matt and Nick took their knees and they smashed him together. And if you ever bashed your knee, it really hurts. I think 1,000 moves then must have gone through Darius's head, but he's learning, he's getting better, he's understanding, because he went for the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up. And the ref went 1, and the ref went 2, and the ref went 3, and I just howled like, ooh, Dalali, they finally did it. This was really put together. It was also sold perfectly like it was a massive deal, and the Young Bucks were like, well, how the flub did that happen given we just won the Best of 7 series? And as I've already said, Top Flight have all the momentum now. Let's keep that rocking and rolling. Giving it up. Also, bring it down, there is the roll-up counter, and it moves up to 7, again across both WWE and AEW. And I have no problem with roll-ups, I just think they're fun. I really wanted to hit 100. The Gun Club were then out here, even though we were told it was time for the Acclaimed, and they were like, look, the reason we have come out first is because the only reason Max Caster and Anthony Bowens are the tag team champion is because we gave them our dad. That was it. I was just on the floor. I love Austin and Colton Gunn. Caster and Bowens then did come out here and they were about to do their rap when the Guns cut them off, and you can just imagine the response to that. But Max was like, well, look, if you can control things, so can I. Audio people cut off their microphones, and not only did he do his freestyle, but he also compared the Guns to Hunter Biden. And I was like, my word. We weren't mucking around either, because almost instantly they got involved in a massive brawl when who broke it up? None other than Billy Gunn, the daddy ass. And he was all like, look, this is way out of control. Everybody needs to remember who they are here, so I have 2 words for you. Family therapy. Now I can hear some people melting down about this, but look, especially on this episode of AEW Dynamite, there was a ton of serious stuff, and I just love that all 5 of these individuals are happy to be as dumb as possible. And when Mr. Daddy Ass did say family therapy, I was dancing around. I love it when wrestling does stuff like this, because it's just so absurd. I am giving it an up. I cannot wait for next week. And speaking of being serious, Hangman Page was then being interviewed by Renee Paquette, who, don't forget, is the wife of Jon Moxley. Ruh-roh. Now it was all calm as first as Renee asked the cowboy how he was feeling, and he was like, yeah, I'm feeling good. I said I was going to beat Jon Moxley, and I did it. I said I was going to knock him out, and I did it. People should start listening to me more. And they got really interesting, because when Paquette asked what was next, he said he needed to have some tough conversation and mend some fences. And if that isn't a reference to the Young Bucks, I don't know what it is. Renee then wrapped up the interview, and Hangman kind of looked like he was going to ask a more serious question about her husband when he changed his mind. This was very interesting and intriguing, because you have to assume that we are going to do a round 2, probably at the pay-per-view, and that's going to be twice as violent, and it's going to be twice as brutal. And while we didn't really involve Renee Paquette here, this was very well put together, because it made you go, huh? So now look at me, stroking my stupid non-existent beard. I want to know what is going to happen. I'm giving it up. And then it was Ricky Starks versus Jake Hager and his hat. It's Dynamite made me very happy. Chris Jericho was on commentary, which I always enjoy because he is one of a kind. And of course, early on here, Jake Hager just went, well, I'm big and strong. And he ran down Ricky Starks like he was a truck. And even after his hat had come off, he told Matt Menard and Angelo Parker, who were at ringside, to give it back to him. He put it on and he just lit up with glee. I think Jake Hager and his hat should be the tag team champions. Ricky was not impressed with this at all, so he smashed Jake with a boot, and then he took this headwear, and not only did he put it on his own head, he did his trademark top rope walk. He really shouldn't have done, because Hager was so mad, and they all fell to the outside. When they were going at it too, and Ricky kind of slid across the ring, he definitely rolled his ankle, and that looked like it sucked, as it did when he just went flying into a Jake Hager lariat. I mean, he beheaded him. Menard and Parker were then setting up a table on the outside because they don't care about the rules, and Hager thought to himself, well, I'm going to powerbomb him through it, when Ricky was able to fight out of this, and he hit a high cross because he was like, man, I'm the babyface. Jake is a lump though, so he kind of fobbed that off and he went for the Hager bomb, but Ricky Starks, man, just kept fighting from underneath because he scored with a tornado DDT for a 2. This freaked out Daddy Magic and Cool Hand Ange because they were like, oh my gosh, we can't have Jake Hager lose. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for our lives? So they cut a casting distraction. But this didn't work at all, because eventually Starks just ran at Jake Hager, he hit him with the spear, and he just pinned him. And I was like, well, that is fantastic. Look at the 2023 Ricky Starks is having. By the end of it, he's going to be a super duper megastar. He's also basically knocked off Jericho and most of his crew, although after this, Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia did run down. And because Rick is smart, he was like, well, I'm not going to hang around for that, am I? I don't want to get my ass whooped. And we are about to tie this all together. But by, I don't know, April or whatever it may be, we should have Ricky Starks in the ring going, well, Jericho Appreciation Society, I beat every single one of them. So he is seriously on a roll, and I'm very keen on all of this, especially if we did get to the end of the year and we did MJF versus Ricky Starks round 2 and Rick became the AEW World Champion. I mean, why the flub not? Up. We then got a video highlighting Adam Cole's return, which was warm and fuzzy in the tum-tum stuff. And if you go out there and read a bunch of tidbits about this, it certainly sounds like him getting back into a wrestling ring was far harder than we know. So I just want to take all my joy and give it to him. And then, exactly what we just talked about happened. Because Tony Schiavone was backstage with Chris Jericho, Daniel Garcia, and Sammy Guevara, and they were so mad. To the point Jericho was like, listen, Ricky Starks, I hate you. Listen, Action Andretti, I hate you too. So now it's me and Sammy Guevara. We're taking you on next week in a tag. Garcia wasn't into that though, because he was like, listen, wait a minute. On Rampage, I'm taking on Action, so how about if I win, you ditch Sam and you team with me instead? This is when Guevara, who's in the background, was like, it's a great idea. This is what I've been trying to teach you, and if you are able to beat Action Andretti, sure, you can team with Mr. Jericho. Also, I have some brand new ring gear for you. And he had these really tight leather pants. I don't know why that made me laugh. Jericho then reminded us it doesn't matter who he tags with because they were going to win, and that is not what should happen, like we already just talked about. They should just keep losing and losing and losing and losing as Ricky Starks and Action Andretti do climb up the ladder, because that's what we have to do given everything we have done, and I imagine that is what we are doing, so up. And then, what are we even meant to do? For it was Bandido versus Brian Danielson, and honestly, they could have gone the entirety of the 2 hours of AEW Dynamite. I don't think I would have been bored at all, because they had this wrestling match that was so stupid it should probably be arrested. I don't even know what that means. It was also kind of wacky because the crowd decided, actually no, we want to cheer for Bandido, even though that wouldn't have been good for Brian Danielson and his feud with MJF. But because Danielson is basically the best wrestler that has ever walked this earth, he just led into it and somehow it made it even better. I mean, they were just wrapping each other up like octopuses to begin with. I was trying to keep up, like, I don't understand what's going on here. When Bryan went, I'm bored of this now, and he started to stamp on Bandido's knee. I'm sorry, but who the hell stamps on somebody's knee? They then went even faster when Bandido rolled through this thing and he locked Danielson by the arms, who then used his neck in order to power back up to his feet. And I'm sorry, I am breaking records here because I am saying sentences that nobody has ever said. Danielson then made a terrible decision because he was on the outside and Bandido just went dive, 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 dive. Although that didn't work either because when he went to springboard back inside, Brian Danielson just booted him out of midair. I was like, this is only the start of the match. What the hell are they gonna do? This did allow the American Dragon to kick his ass for a while until Bandido was able to bust his face with a face buster. But this is when the chops started, and seriously, it sounded like this. That doesn't even do it justice. And of course, obviously, later on when Danielson decided that he was going to flip out the corner, Bandido went revenge, and then he super kicked him out of midair. This was like watching some kind of superhero cartoon. But then more wrestling tenets, because Bandido went for the frog splash, but Danielson got his knees up and instantly went for the label lock. And he was so desperate to win this that when he did have it locked in, he just kept screaming tap, tap, tap. But because Bandido wears that mask and he can't really see anything if it gets pulled up over his eyes, he started reaching out with his foot, and the only reason he got out of this is because one of his tippy toes went onto the rope. I mean, what a flippin' hero. There was then this amazing reversal of the 21 plex when Brian Danielson landed on his feet, and that's when they just charged at each other and fell on the floor, and they were both down. As soon as they were back up, Bandido was able to hit the 21 plex, but Danielson was like, I don't care about that. And then they got into this strike battle, and I tell you, it was like playing Street Fighter, but the rule is, well, you're not allowed to block, and I'm not allowed to block, and we will just see whose energies meter is dead last. Now, I don't think there was a winner because people were going for brain busters and people were going for label locks, and none of them would hit, which is when, in an act of desperation, Bryan just ran at Bandido, he hit him with the big knee, and he pinned him to the 1, 2, 3, and honestly, I got up again and I was just applauding, how do they make it look so effortless? Of course, MJF appeared on the big screen afterwards, and he was going on about some gibberish that, oh man, you've been taking on masks, Max, but eventually I'm going to take off the mask, and you'll not know what's going to go on. I don't understand a word of what he just said, but I do want to talk about the fact people keep going, oh man, Brian Danielson is going to destroy MJF in an Iron Man match. There's no way MJF can do a 60-minute match. Does Maxwell Jacob Friedman not keep proving everybody wrong? Yes, he does. We should probably just start trusting him. That was basically the idea behind what he was saying, though, because Friedman totally believes he will be able to hang with Brian Danielson. But I tell you, when it comes to this match, there's nothing else we can do. It doesn't just get an up, it gets a golden up. This is some proper top-tier wrestling talent. We then had this video with Kushida, Toni Storm, and Saraya, and by the end of it, I was like, man, this Saraya and Toni Storm, who the hell do they think they are? Also, you got to give a shout out to Kushida here. The way she responds to this stuff is genuinely perfect. Because seriously, while Toni did defend Kushida for accidentally throwing the kendo stick in last week, because Saraya wasn't happy about that, Storm was then, oh man, I'm sick of these AEW originals. I want to go out there and beat them up. Once again, Kushida was like, I'm right here. Storm was also taken on Willow Nightingale later and promised to win. And when they did walk off, once again, they turned to Kushida and they were like, but you stay in the back, we don't want anything to do with you. I actually said to myself, well, how the hell are they not bad guys? But we'll get to that in 1 minute. And then we had this really cool interview because Renee Paquette was chatting to Prince Nana on Brian Cage when MJF walked up, gave them a bunch of money and said, look, I need a machine next week against Brian Danielson, but I don't care if you win, and I don't care if you lose, just break his arm. MJF then slapped Cage and Bryan was gonna kill him until he was all like, oh man, you must let that hate run through you, like he was some kind of Sith Lord, and Prince Nana was like, look, we just want the money. I thought this was so clever, both bits put together. They were so good at kind of expanding the storylines and getting me interested. I'm calling this one on the fly, I'm giving it an up. And then AEW did some good ass booking. Whatever that means. Because it was Toni Storm versus Willow Nightingale, and that's right. Toni Storm and Saraya showed their true colors, and I think they're walking down the bad guy path. And it was so well thought out too, because I spent the whole time going, well, Willow Nightingale must win this, so when she didn't, I was devastated. And if this is not building to a women's blood and guts match, where half the team is going to be AEW originals, and half the team are going to be the outsiders, then we are doing something that doesn't make sense to me. But it is actually going to be a variation of that. This is some of the best women's stuff AEW's ever done. Nightingale did kick Toni Storm's ass for a while too, until Tone pretended she wanted to offer a handshake when she slapped Willow right around the face. And I was like, oh, how dare she? And then, oh my gosh, Nightingale was sat on the ring apron when Toni Storm came in with that hip attack and knocked her to the outside. And honestly, who knew a hip could do so much damage? I think Sheila could smell what was going to happen, so she did come to ringside. She's like, I don't have to listen to you two, you absolute goobers. And this is when Willow got back into it when she hit this massive spine buster. I mean, that probably busted her spine. Sadly, she then missed a cannonball in the corner, which allowed Storm to heat the sweet cheek music, which is the worst of all the hip attacks. Honestly, it's absolutely horrendous. But Nightingale still kept coming back into this when she absolutely murked Toni Storm with a pounce. This is when Saraya jumped onto the ring apron and she cast distraction, when Toni Storm hit the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment and held the tights, and she got the 1, 2, 3, and this was genuinely in my face. I turned into Shida. Also bring down the board because obviously it does roll up to 8. And after this, Toni, Storm and Saraya started to beat the crap out of Willow, Nightingale. Once again, Shida was on the outside going, she was so confused by all of this. She needs some kind of MVP award. And even though it was Ruby Soho who came out to save her tag team partner, 2 things. 1, a couple of weeks ago on Rampage, they couldn't get on at all. And 2, if we're going to start putting people into categories, Ruby Soho ain't no AEW original. She's a flippin' outsider. So this is a massive up because we are just planting so many seeds here. And while you can see where it's going, it's a great direction to head in. So once again, I am busting out the claps. This was absolutely brilliant. All I really do ask is that you do get Nyla Rose involved at one point. Thank you very much. Then you got a video focused on the firm about how much they hate Jungle Boy and Hook. The absolute best part is when Stokely Hathaway was like, I can't believe we lost last week to people with stupid names. So that's it. He's the best. Takeshita's big push then continued. And it's so damn simple. Because Renee was interviewing him as Takeshita said that he really respects Brian Danielson when he said something in Japanese and Paquette was like, huh, what does that mean? Takeshita was happy to translate this too and he said it means MJF is an asshole, and I actually laughed out loud. And then my brain went, oh my gosh, this is what we should do. MJF versus Takeshita should compete in a non-title match, and Takeshita should win. Because then all of a sudden, everyone's going to lose their minds. Oh my gosh, he beat the AEW World Champion. And you can do a bit of 50-50 booking when you do the rematch for the championship and MJF wins. But we're never going to forget the previous moment, and it allows him to get higher and higher and higher. So I just thought this was so smart, and it was so simple, and boy howdy do I like myself some Takeshita. Getting it up. Which did indeed bring us to our main event, which was Darby Allin versus Kushida, and the absolute highlight is that the TNT title feels important again. I mean, AEW has righted so many wrongs in 2023, and they continue to smash it. Kevin Knight and DKC of the New Japan Dojo were out with Kushida, and of course Sting was here with Darby Allin. And if you are one of the crazies, you can calm down, because as Kushida was making his way to the ring, Excalibur did a great job in saying, well, here's who this guy is, here's his accolades, here's why he's getting this opportunity. So don't start going, well, nobody knows who he was. It was perfectly explained. It was nonsense right away as we went through all these submissions and all these counters as Kushida flipped out of an arm drag and was able to hit the drop kick. But when they were fighting on the outside, amazingly, for the first time maybe ever, it was Darby Allin throwing Kushida into barricade as opposed to Darby Allin's head getting smashed open. So he's learning. Both guys were then going for the hoverboard lock and the coffin drop respectively, but it was far too early for that. Well, it wasn't too early for a code red, because Darby Allin hit that and he got a 2. This did lead to Kushida getting out of dodge because he's not stupid, when all of a sudden Allin dived onto the New Japan Dojoists, if that's the right word. I was like, it was completely unnecessary. Around this time, Kushida also decided, well, I'm done with all this nonsense, and he started working over Darby Allin's arm, because 1, it ties into his finisher, but also 2, given the punishment that Darby has taken this year, it probably already is a little bit whammy-jammy, and yeah, after he hit the Scorpion Death Drop, he wasn't able to capitalize because he didn't have a limb. He still was able to hit his over-the-top stunner onto the ring apron, hardest part of the ring, but much like the commentators said, who actually got the worst of that? Because Darby's ass just went flying into the surface, whereas Kushida basically fell to the floor. Although we did just talk about the hardest part of the ring. Hang on.
No, I won't have it.
What are you doing here?
We are all sick and tired of you telling us the hardest part of the ring is the ring apron.
But it is!
No, it's not, it's the ring post.
That's the joke, you absolute goober. Why do you have to come? Ow! I don't know why I even bother anymore. The absolute highlight of this, though, is when Darby Allin put Kushida on a chair on the outside and he went to the top rope. I have no idea what he was going to do, but he dived at the man and somehow before he hit the floor, Kushida was able to apply the armbar. Now, the worst part was Allin just went splat as he did hit, but I watched this 4 times and I don't understand how they pulled it off. The timing was perfect. Cassidy was then desperate for the hoverboard lock because he knew that he had worn him down too much, but of course Darby Allin whenever that happened. When Knight was all, listen Sting, here's a towel, why don't you throw it in for your boy? And he's never going to do that to his son, so he took that thing and he threw it into the crowd. Nice memento for a fan. It didn't help Allin at all, who was having his arm pulled off, but he just used all the power in his body. He got to his feet when he applied that Last Supper pin, which really is a cool looking move, you know. He got the 1, 2, 3, and he is still your TNT champion. They were super best friends afterwards, because this was absolutely one show that you wanted to have a happy ending on. Not like that, don't be all weird in the comments. And once again, reuniting Darby Allin and the TNT title has been a great idea. I am giving it an up. It also means that as we have entered this brand new year, Dynamite is just hitting on all cylinders. And I know people like Simon, you should find a down somewhere. Not on your flubbing life, especially on this day, and it is getting it up. Now please do leave a comment below and let me know what you thought about last night's AEW Dynamite. Like the video, share the video and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com where we will keep you up to date with the wrestling news. Same on social media. And look, there's loads of videos on the channel. If you'd like a distraction today, that's what they're there for. My name's Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you very much for watching me as always. You take care of yourself. I will see you soon.